welcome back to All Watch What They're Watching, where we're curious and adamant about cinema. My name is Kyrie, and I am one of the hosts.
And I'm Adam.
And he's the other host.
Correct.
And today we're doing one of our arts versus charts. But first, we do want to talk a little bit about we've said a lot the past few weeks. You know, it's kind of the two big seasons of movies are summer blockbusters and award season, and we're kind of knee deep in that award season right now. So we've got, plus with the holidays and stuff, even if it's not an awards film, blockbusters tend to come out around this time of year because, you know, people have time off, they're wondering what to do with the family, you take them to the movies. So
it's dark outside.
Yeah, exactly. You can't really go out and do much. But I had planned, and I mentioned this on the last episode, I had planned to see one or two movies this week. It just didn't happen. I kind of mentioned it to you, but I just, work once again kind of got in the way. But I am planning on seeing Rental Family either tonight or tomorrow, which you did see, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And before I get into it a little bit, I'm just curious what your kind of perception is. To me, it feels like this time this year compared to this time last year seems like there's just so much more coming out, at least that I'm interested in. And there seems to be more buzz around like right now compared to right now last year. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's just because now we do a movie podcast, so I have a little bit more, I'm kind of checking the pulse on it. But I think I'd agree in a few ways, because, for example, you know, Wicked Part 1 came around this time last year, and I don't know, I'd have to check box office numbers, but I do think, you know, Part 2s tend to garner a lot of attention.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think, you know, sequels and trilogies, the farther you go, you know, the big ones tend to do well. So I think there was a lot of buzz last year, but I would hazard to guess that there's even more this year. But I think you're right. I feel like every time we talk, it's like, oh, okay, and yeah, these 2 or 3 or 4 movies are coming out in the next couple weeks.
Yeah.
So I definitely get that.
And even then, just this week, I was like, hey, we've totally missed on Knives Out, which is coming out soon too, which is another fairly big one that's coming out in the next few weeks. So it just seems like there's more and more and more. I'll get into my weekend though, because I did have quite the new movie weekend. It was a 4-movie Friday plus a Wicked Part 2 Saturday evening. So the first movie I saw Friday was finishing the Night of the Hunter. So we'll talk about that obviously as part of this episode. But the first movie that I've been really wanting to see, and I didn't realize it dropped on Netflix on Friday, was Train Dreams.
Right.
Train Dreams stars Joel Edgerton. It has Felicity Jones and Carrie Condon in it as well, both as supporting actresses. And I think it's premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival, and ever since then people have been really big on it. It's co-written by the writer-director for Sing Sing. We did an episode obviously on Sing Sing, and I really love Sing Sing, and so this is the same type of vibes, I would say, as far as like really deliberate art direction and really kind of curated message on just what it means to be human.
Does it cover, because I know nothing about this movie, to be completely honest.
I didn't either, so I'm glad I went in blind.
Does it kind of focus on like because in Sing Sing I wouldn't say there's racial commentary, but I would definitely say there's kind of some social things it's pointing out, as well as it does, I would say, have a little bit of an focus on race. Does Train Dreams do that at all?
It's not the focus, but there are definitely elements there.
Okay.
Different, but very clearly there. And so this is really just it's set in Eastern Washington, and it basically follows this logger from the 1920s through the course of his life, and just kind of how the things around him are changing, and sort of the reflection on his life, I would say, a little bit. But I won't say too much more just to avoid spoiler territory.
Yeah.
It's a much more deliberate, kind of slow film where you want to go into it when you want to see something beautiful, when you want to see something reflective and like just willing to take its time to kind of sit with a lot of stuff is the kind of movie for that. So in some similar ways as Sing Sing. So highly recommend. It's already in my top 5 of 2025. I do tend to gravitate towards those movies a lot of the time.
Right.
From what I've seen of predictions, it does seem to be like in that lower contention status of like it's in lists of being predicted to be a nomination for Best Picture and a few of these other things. We'll kind of see how things shake out. So that's on Netflix. So everyone that is interested in that, again, it's not a Marvel blockbuster, but it is sort of something that's very beautiful and reflective, and I highly recommend it. The next movie that I went to see was Rental Family, and this was in the theater, starring Brendan Fraser. And this is directed and written by Hikari, who is a Japanese filmmaker. One thing that I really love is the marketing is a lot of times really fun, and they'll do unique things like on Reddit. They often do AMAs or Ask Me Anything where the people involved will go in. Both Train Dreams and Rental Family actually had these where the filmmakers would go on and they answered a bunch of questions. So I actually read the AMA for Rental Family before I went and saw it and just picked up on a couple of the different things that she was trying to communicate with the movie, which this is a movie that is fun, funny. It's in Japan and they do switch between Japan and English a lot. So there's just this kind of cultural identity to it as well of Brendan Fraser, obviously this American actor, and he's learning different cultural aspects and things. And so there's some humor in it. There's some, it's a movie that I think you start watching and you know where it's going to end up, and that's okay. It's just something that kind of gives you a hug. So the Rental Family, quick plot. Again, he's an American actor, seems to be kind of on the tail end of his career, not really finding much success, ends up getting involved with this company that's a rental family, which essentially anyone can call this company and ask for a father or a brother or a friend or an interviewer, and they pay that person to come and to essentially role play and do certain things with these people. And so it's this really interesting concept that automatically you have this movie you can then go and do all these kind of fun things with. And again, that AMA I mentioned, the creator just kind of talks about like, I want people to be kind. I want people to leave feeling that and to feel like connection is important.
I like that.
Yeah, and in some cases, something like this, it kind of poses the question of like, is this ethically okay? And that's kind of what the movie wrestles with. But ultimately, it's just about finding people and understanding how to get through life. But I highly recommend. This is another one that is, I think, more on the outside looking in than a Train Dreams, but it's similar in the vein of like Coda a few years ago, which won Best Picture. So it's like it's a well put together movie. It's good. It's heartwarming. Maybe not as sort of cinephile-y as other contenders, but something that generally everyone will likely go in and say, yeah, that was a good movie.
Cool. I'm very, very excited for it, honestly.
Good. Yeah, you should be. The last one for Friday I'll mention, I got home. I went to Rental Family a little earlier than I go to see movies, and I got home and I said, hey, I got enough time. I'm going to throw in another movie.
Oh my gosh.
I know. I was really feeling it. And so I watched another movie that I'd seen floating around awards conversations, mostly for original screenplay and potentially squeaking into Best Picture. And that is Sorry Baby. I don't know if you have heard anything about Sorry Baby.
It was this was back because a while ago when I had kind of recently bought the AMC pass, I didn't catch it. Like there were no showings when I had looked at it, or there was one that I couldn't make or something like that. But I do know somewhat about it, and it's been on my radar. I haven't had a chance to see it yet, but I do know what movie you're talking about.
So this one is similar to Twinless, which I talked about a few months ago, in that it
Mm-hmm.
is written, directed, and starring Eva Victor.
Yes.
They are fantastic, just a phenomenal direction and acting and everything in between, to where it is very well put together. I will say I walked into this completely blind, where again I'd seen
Okay.
that it was in conversations, and so I was a little bit, I would say, caught off guard's maybe a good word, because I think it is very smart and very funny. Like, when you're just watching a movie and the writing is just very, very fun and good, and you're like, wow, this is really good. But
Yeah.
I would not go into this movie blind, because ultimately this movie is a movie about the character's experience dealing with and trying to move on or not move on from a rape experience. And
Oh,
so
well, okay.
I would definitely know that going in. There's nothing visually graphic about it, but there is very graphic descriptions. And so just a, spoiler or kind of content warning there, that I don't think it's better to go into this movie blind. I think it would have been a better experience for me to know that going ahead, and just kind of be, yeah, I'd kind of be ready for it. Like, it shifts tonally a lot, but not in a bad way, in a very like deliberate and well put together way. And I think
Mm-hmm.
very intentional too about the feelings that they're trying to convey. So Eva Victor, again, just phenomenal, and one of those, like James Sweeney with Twinless, that I now am excited to keep an eye on, kind of what they're up to and what they're going to be doing. And I do hope
Gotcha.
that this does have awards conversations, because I think it's a very well put together movie, and kind of opening that conversation, and the message behind it is very deliberately, kind of
Mm-hmm.
the messiness of this all. So yeah, I watched that one Friday night out of the blue, and glad I did. And then Saturday, finally, we did go see Wicked Part 2. Now,
Right.
you were saying something I think is kind of interesting to start the conversation, that part 2 of movies tend to do really well. And I think what's really interesting about Wicked Part 2 is that it does not feel like its own movie. It really feels like part 2 of the first movie, which I think is just
Okay.
kind of it's a weird start to the movie, is what I'll say. We talked a lot about Wicked in the last episode. A lot of the same issues are kind of there, but I will go over two quick things. And overall, I'll say I did not like it. And so I can't remember if I told this story last time, but, and I mentioned this in my Letterboxd review. I didn't grow up with Wicked. So Allie and I got the chance to see it in Kansas City a few years ago. Act 1 finishes, it's defying gravity. We're like, yeah, it's cool, it's great. Act 2 finishes, and we look at each other and we're like, huh, that was interesting. So we always kind of were like, I don't know about this.
And I will mention, it's pretty widely regarded that Act 2 is not as good as Act 1. Like
And
that's a very popular opinion.
a lot of the discourse lately, and a lot of people talking about that. I've seen some people that like, it was actually genius splitting this into two parts, because then on number 1, you're like, yeah, this is great, this is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And then number 2 happens, and you're like, okay. So that's my two things. Number 1, I don't think the plot works at all. Like, period. Especially if you just look at this, if you just walk in and you see this as a movie, it doesn't make any sense from a movie perspective of what's going on in the plot. And I am one to suspend my belief and go with what's going on, what's being showed. But it's just incoherent about, like, what is the point going on right now? What are we trying to do
Mm.
here? And what's frustrating in that aspect is that there are, like, at the surface, there's these, like, touch points of fascism, or of, like, we talk about The Wizard of Oz and how it's like, this amazing marvel of a movie, and it's beautiful, and there's all these different things. And the real life production of Wizard of Oz had some major issues from, like, a worker's perspective of, like, how people should be treated. So there's all these like there's these things there like that is really interesting of fascism and things that appear beautiful that the underneath or the behind the scenes maybe isn't. And I
Right.
feel like this movie is so afraid to ever actually go there. And so that's
Okay.
my biggest issue is that those are there and they just never get into it and that the plot is just weird. It just doesn't make any sense. My second issue, we talked a lot about it doesn't look good. We don't like how it looks. And I know that sometimes I have a hard time putting that to words of exactly what the issue is. I saw a video
Mm.
earlier this week that I think figured it out for me. I can't remember who the creator was, but it was a really good video. And he was basically saying like an easy way for people to be like pretentious about films nowadays versus old films is the digital versus film debate. That anything that's shot on
Mm.
film is going to be inherently better. Anything on digital is going to be messy and not as intentional, and they're not worrying as much about the lighting, all these different things. And that's, in many cases that is true, but I think that's not the underlying issue. And what he believes was the issue is about focus. And it's that in so many modern movies, when you're looking at a scene of somebody talking or singing, a lot of times in Wicked's case, the focus of the scene is on the person and everything in the background is blurred out. And
Mm.
anyone that hasn't seen Wicked Part 2, now that I've said this, it's going to be the only thing you're going to notice because it's just about every single scene is exactly this way. And the effect on the viewer when this happens is it makes it so much harder to like believe that what you're watching is an actual lived in place. It just feels
Mm.
like they're just there, like on a set or in a location, but it doesn't feel like they're actually in this world of Oz. And again,
Gotcha.
I can be convinced just about anything, right? If I watch a YouTube video about it. But it was all I could think about. And it was all I could I'm like, yeah, this is, besides a lot of the issue and color palette things that just visually I think could be better. It's like, yeah. And in this video, he shows Avatar, The Way of Water, which I'm not a big Avatar stan, but I think from a visual filmmaking perspective, it is one of the greatest feats of
Right.
movie making. And he shows this one scene of when they like arrive at the water, whatever tribe place, and everything in the background is just like beautiful and things are going on. There's fish swimming, there's these kids running around, there's all these different things. And so I think because Avatar obviously is one of the best examples of all CGI, all digital, but it is so
Right.
clear in its direction and in its world that you're like, yeah, this alien planet
Yeah.
feels lived in. It feels like real in the world of this movie. And I don't feel that same feeling in Oz when so much
Mm.
of the background, I don't even know what's there because it's just blurred out and it could be a green screen for all I know.
Right.
So those are my two issues from a plot itself perspective and from a movie making perspective. It just didn't work for me. Now it's going to be an interesting conversation that I think we could devote a whole episode to, or we can have some longer conversations about at some point of why is something like Wicked Part 2 going to make a gazillion dollars and everyone's going to love it? It already got an A cinema score. So why do people love it if I really don't? And I don't try to be grumpy. I don't try to be mean about things. I didn't like the movie. So many people are going to like it and love it. And it makes me wonder sometimes what exactly is going on there. So we don't have to get into that now, but it's just something I keep kind of thinking about. And I don't, and I'm recognizing that, right? I just was critical about this movie that's going to be very popular. Am I right?
Well,
Am I wrong? It's weird.
it's interesting that you say that though, because I have people that I follow on Letterboxd. Some critics, some just friends, some casual movieers, some more pretentious and snobby. None of the people I follow on Letterboxd have given this movie higher than a 3.5. So I mean, it is, and granted, this is simply
But I
my
think that
experience. I
I
follow a very specific group of people, but
and I think the curve is still like 3.8 if I remember right. I'll pull it up. Yeah, it's still a 3.8 overall on Letterboxd, and I gave it 2.5.
yeah. And so that's the thing is, I would say, it is pretty high. My sister saw it, loved it. Yeah, I know. There's people I follow on Instagram and stuff who loved it. So yeah, I mean, it will definitely be interesting to see kind of where this falls as far as just Oscar season, award season, general population. It'll be interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, it made more opening weekend than the first made opening weekend. So
This was solidly in almost everyone's predictions for the last 11 months of making,
oh yeah,
Best Picture predictions and stuff. But
oh
after
yeah,
the initial reception, there are people that are starting to drop it out of the Best Picture race.
yes.
I don't know if that'll actually happen, but it'll be interesting to kind of track and watch.
Yeah, I actually had a friend of mine on Letterboxd who was like, he watches the Best Picture nominations every year, and he basically was like, if this doesn't show up as a Best Picture nomination, he's like, I will have watched this movie for nothing.
That's awesome. That's really funny.
So, but yeah, we'll see. It'll be interesting. I have heard, the one thing I've heard is Ariana Grande in particular is really something.
Oh yeah, I think she very likely could win Best Actress, Best Supporting Actress, excuse me.
Yeah.
And I think it's well deserved, but we'll talk at some point about doesn't make any sense that you can campaign her as Best Supporting and not Best Actress, but whatever. It's
Well, so that's kind of what's coming up the pipeline in
the
theaters.
Adam
We'll kind of
Show,
keep
yep.
talking. Yeah, I'm planning on seeing Zootopia as well here in the next little bit, so we'll have lots to talk about the coming month and a half or so. But our arts v charts. So we decided to pair. I'd been really wanting to rewatch Night of the Hunter, and just for the benefit of our listenership, my original thought was to pair this with No Country for Old Men, which, to be fair, I still think that would be an interesting matchup and a good pairing. I would say they both have very similar noir styles, and I would say that if you liked No Country for Old Men, you will probably like Night of the Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
But then one of my friends suggested this film, and I could not get it out of my head, so we are partnering it with 1990's Home Alone.
This is hilarious. This is a perfect
It's so
pairing. I mean, I laughed out loud in two parts when I was watching The Night of the Hunter because I was like, I cannot believe how perfect of a pairing this is. This is hilarious. So
good.
really well done on picking that, Kyrie. I was very well enjoyed my time thinking
Good.
about the comparisons between these two movies.
Good. So yeah, I mean, for those of you who have been living under a rock, Home Alone came out in 1990, directed by Chris Columbus, who also did Mrs. Doubtfire, the first two Harry Potter films. Writer is John Hughes, who, did 16 Candles, Breakfast Club, all kinds of stuff. Starring Macaulay Culkin, Joe Pesci, and Daniel Stern. But yeah, do you want to give us a brief overview of the film?
Yeah, absolutely. This film follows this huge family, right? And they're planning their big Christmas vacation where they're going to France, right? France in this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they go to Florida in the second one, I think.
I haven't
Have you
seen
seen
the
the
second
second
one, so
one?
I don't know. Mm-mm.
At all? You haven't seen the second one?
No,
Oh my
I've never seen the
gosh.
second one.
It is like, it's a weird comparison as a movie. I don't know how to describe this. It's like the first and second are interchangeable. Like they are almost the same movie, almost. Of like, I don't know, there's no quality differentiating and there's like no story differentiating. It's a weird, you'll
Okay.
have to watch it. Anything
Yeah, I'm
beyond
looking it up.
that, I personally don't. I know there are some Home Alone 3 truthers out there, but I am not one of them, so sorry if anybody. Anyways, long story short, this movie is about a family that goes on vacation, accidentally leaves their 10-year-old son behind. The 10-year-old son then lives by himself for a week and eventually gets intertwined with some bandits, the wet bandits, who
The
are
Wet
trying
Bandits.
to rob people who are on vacation. And so there's this cat and mouse game of, is this house occupied or not? They eventually mingle. Great hijinks ensues with just the biggest physical comedy and, cartoon levels violence of Tom and Jerry in live action ensue.
Mm-hmm.
And it's Christmas. And that is Home Alone. It is again, it's just, it feels like a movie. I don't know how to describe it. There's just like these John Hughes and Chris Columbus type movies. You're like your Goonies, your Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. All these like comedies that have these, I don't know, just this, I don't know what the right word is to even describe this, but it just feels so 90s, feels so
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. This is a classic for me. This is every single year almost of my life. I am watching Home Alone at least one time during the Christmas season.
So that was going to be my question, was kind of what was your relationship to this film? So you've grown up with it. This has been a big part of, this is Christmas for you.
Oh yes, absolutely. This
Okay.
is
Okay.
love this movie, love everything about it. I think, I revisiting it, I've said this a few times in this podcast, and sorry, I'm trying to collect my thoughts just because it's just so.
Yeah, you're good.
Anytime we talk about like one of these movies that I grew up with, it's hard to assess from this perspective of like looking at it from arts versus charts or looking at it critically. It's
Right.
like, I have no idea what star rating I could even possibly give this movie just because it feels so ingrained to like
Right.
growing up and what Christmas is and what Christmas feels like.
I getcha.
But I think it's a good example of a movie that has a good balance between something a kid will enjoy plus having enough adult humor that's not like bad, but still allows for a family enjoyment. I think Joe
Yeah.
Pesci being cast is hilarious. Reading up on
So
him,
good.
a lot of people said that he was much more difficult to work with than
Daniel Stern.
Macaulay Culkin.
Oh,
Macaulay Culkin.
Macaulay Culkin.
He was mad about having to wake up early. He was mad about not being able to film past 10 because they're working with a kid. He was mad about swearing. He would try to swear as much as possible. That's why you get a lot of his like gibberish swearing in there. So for anyone that doesn't know, this is a guy that works with Martin Scorsese in a lot of gangster films. And he's like, always being a gangster.
Fun fact, they originally tried to get Robert De Niro for the part.
Yeah,
Joe
no
Pesci,
kidding.
and then they picked Joe Pesci, and Joe Pesci is actually the highest paid actor for this film.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. The other fun little tidbit is John Candy, who is in the polka band that picks up his mom. He basically did this movie as a favor to, I can't remember if it was John Hughes or Chris Columbus, but they only had him for one day, so all of his scenes was filmed in 23 hours. And they gave him no lines. He just improvised everything that is in the movie. So I really love that part of it. But yeah, that's again, it makes me happy. Love this movie. I have a lot to say just because I'll let you get in, since it's been a while since you revisited. Why don't you share a little bit of how you feel about it, and then I can jump in and kind of share some of my thoughts on what you say.
Yeah, I do remember watching this maybe once or twice as a kid, but I forgot a lot of it. There were things like I remember, the old man who shovels snow. I remember him being in it, and he was a scary presence, but then you learn he's not so bad. And obviously I remember the hijinks that ensue when the bandits try to rob Kevin's house. But lots of things that I forgot. So I came into this fairly fresh. Like at one point I asked Sarah a question or something, and she was like, "Have you ever seen this?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, but it's been decades. I don't remember anything."
That's awesome.
I do think it's a lot of fun. It's definitely because I have friends who have described it as like pretty pandering to children, and they didn't like that. I feel like I don't really care. I think it's really fun. Like, the acting is over the top. I'm not annoyed by it.
Yeah,
Well, because Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern in particular did not think this movie was going to do well, so they just kind of had fun with it, which is why everything
phoned
is
it
so
in.
over the
Yeah,
top. Yeah,
right.
and it ends up working. I think as far as like a filmmaking perspective, like a craft, I think it's serviceable. The lighting, cinematography, everything. There's nothing really in it that I'm like, wow, that's really good. But there's no moments, where I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, that's bad. It's all just, it's fine. It's serviceable. It does its job. But a couple fun facts as well. Chris Columbus was originally going to do National Lampoon's Christmas, and he met Chevy Chase, did not like Chevy Chase, and was like, I don't want to work with him. And so he was given the option of a few other films to work on and ended up picking this one. And then it was fun as well. I had to look this up. The younger cousin, Fuller, who
Yep.
Kevin is going to sleep with, and he's like, "Oh, don't make me sleep with him. He wets the bed." The minute he showed up on screen, I was like, is that Kieran? Is that Kieran Culkin? So we paused it and looked it up. It sure is. Kieran
Yeah.
Culkin has a little, basically cameo, um,
Yeah, I
of
love
this
that.
cousin. But yeah, no, I came into this again pretty new. I didn't have a whole lot of the whole childhood starry-eyed, oh wow, this is amazing. I remember watching it and I remember liking it. Um, I will say I think one of the things that I was noticing is because we paused it a little over an hour for some reason, and I was like, we're over an hour into this and like none of the shenanigans have happened. Well, I texted you. I
Oh,
was like, when
shoot.
do the shenanigans start? Because that's kind of what I was here for. I
Right.
wanted the little, Tom and Jerry showdown, and that I didn't realize that section is only like 20 minutes.
Right.
Like it is a very short part of the movie, and there's a lot of setup. I think I would, and maybe I'm just having this critique because this is how I remember it. I wish almost that the the showdown had lasted 2 nights.
Okay.
I wish that we didn't have quite as much setup, and there wasn't quite as much of Kevin just chilling in the house, and there maybe could have been, maybe a night where a lot of things happen outside or as they're first coming into the house, and they're basically like, okay, we'll come back tomorrow, and then come back tomorrow, and that's when the rest of the things, play out or something. I don't know. That was just kind of my only thing is I felt like there was, over an hour of setup for only like 15, 20 minutes of things where I was like laughing out loud. But I think it's super fun. I think the ending is really sweet overall. Him being reunited with his family is really sweet. The conversation, everything he has with the old man, and the old man reuniting with his son.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was very, very sweet. So overall, like I had a really great time with it. I had a lot of fun. It's not something that I'm going to be going to like every single year, but I was like, especially when I have kids, I could see this being a one that we regularly pull out. I had a really good time with it.
Good feedback. Two quick things I'll mention.
Yeah.
First, so Chris Columbus, the director, is also a screenwriter. So he helped do the
Yes.
screenwriting on like Goonies and That's Such a Thing. This is a little fun fact, but he was the one that wrote the basically everything with the old man in this movie,
Mm,
which I think is really good because it kind of does give again that kind of emotional weight to the end and kind of what some of the stuff that's going on. The other thing I
mm-hmm.
wanted to mention is it's really interesting, and I get where you're coming with that, like the hijinks is only happening at the end, and it seems like very little time. I wonder if there were more, or if it were. Well, first thing I'll say is watch Home Alone 2, and then you'll get more.
Okay. All right.
But it is an interesting question of like, what is the balance? Like, obviously, there's
Yeah.
enough because you remembered it, and I think it's good and it's great and it's very memorable. But like, if they put a bunch more in, would it have worked overall as a movie? It
I mean,
kind of
fair point.
reminds me
Yeah.
of like Silence of the Lambs. People talk about a lot, where Anthony Hopkins, who plays Hannibal Lecter, seems to have a much more like presence in that movie than he actually does. Like I think he's in less than 20 minutes of the total movie.
Yeah,
And
right.
it's this thing that people talk about of like, wow, to come in so powerful that it feels like you're there the entire time. That's what you're trying
Okay.
to do with any movie. And so I wonder if your criticism is coming back as something that worked so well when you watched it the first time that it felt like it had a bigger presence than when you came back and you revisited it.
Right. No, I think that's a good point. I think that's a good point. I don't really I don't know what to say about that because it is hard again because I've seen it once and I was maybe like, I don't know, 8,
Sure.
and now I'm seeing it 20 some odd years later. I think those are valid points though. It really is one like I know a lot of people who are diehard fans of Home Alone, and like this is one that again I enjoyed myself. Like there was no moment where I was like, "Oh, this is going on too long." Like even the setup, I was like, "This is taking it like I want to get to the hijinks. Come on."
Yeah, yeah.
But
So
I
I
never really had a point where I felt like it was dragging, or I was just like, "Oh my gosh." Whereas like Wicked Part One, for example, I was like, "How long is this movie, Moses?" I didn't ever feel that way with Home Alone.
Gosh, even I am not one to harass long movies almost ever. I mean, Allie and I were looking at each other during Wicked Part 2. Like, I looked at her at one point and I was like, I'm bored. Like, genuinely, I'm bored. This is crazy. So
Yeah.
good luck. Good luck on that one. I think
Thank you.
parting my last thought on Home Alone is I really want you to watch the second one now. And
I do too.
I think just wait for a day that you and Sarah, maybe you're just like kind of tired, long day at work, or just like things just seem like I'm exhausted. This is frustrating. Throw on Home Alone 2. I think it does a lot of things. Again, I don't think it dips in quality at all. And in a lot of ways, there's a lot of added humor to like this is happening again. So I think you
Mhm.
would like it. Yeah, check it out.
Honestly, I mean, because like I said, I think we're gonna catch Rental Family tomorrow, and because Sarah pulled a muscle and is not feeling great. So we watched Home Alone literally last night. I'm even maybe thinking that
There you
that
go.
might be
Yeah.
what we throw on this evening. That might be fun.
Good. Get you ready for
But yeah,
the
um,
holidays.
Home Alone. Like I said, I've been doing star ratings just slightly different now, where I say I think quality wise, I gave it a 3 star. Enjoyability, I gave a 4 star, so I landed it right at 3.5. I think it's covering closer to 4 because I really did have a blast. Like I
Good.
had a really, really fun time. I think quality wise, it's fine. Like I said, the acting's over the top. Everything else is kind of serviceable. Story's cute. I had a lot of fun.
Good. Yeah, like I mentioned, I think this is one that's just impossible for me to rate, but I'll say I love this movie. Obviously,
Yeah.
there's a few movies where Allie will be like, "Hey, do you care if I watch XYZ Christmas movie without you?" You know, 'cause we'll be playing video games or something. And Home Alone is
Right.
one that I'm always like, "Oh, I need to watch Home Alone." So,
Okay,
yeah,
that's fun. So pairing it with 1995's Night of the Hunter. So this one I know quite a bit more about, and I'll share kind of my history with the film in a bit.
great.
But directed by Charles Lawton, the writer is mostly James Agee. Charles Lawton helped a little bit with the script. It's based off of a novel by Davis Grubb, starring Robert Mitchum as the villain, Lillian Gish as the kind, sweet older lady that appears halfway through, and then Billy Chapin and Sally Jane Bruce as the two main children. So, summary of this film is there's a man who ends up robbing a bank of $10,000, kills a couple people in the robbery, gives the money to his kids, and basically is like, "Don't tell your mom. Keep this money. You know, this will be yours to help you get by." The man ends up going to prison, and while in prison, he meets this corrupt, evil preacher man, who the preacher, then hears about it and is like, "Well, I gotta get my hands on that money." Because the movie is set in the 1930s during the Great Depression, so now that amount of money is worth about $250,000.
Oh, I didn't realize that's when it was set. I just looked up 1955, $10,000. And I was like, this is like a little over $100,000. Like, I don't know that I'm freaking
It's
out
about
that much.
it's about
So
double that for 1930s Great Depression.
being Great Depression, that makes more sense.
Yeah. So the preacher gets out of jail because he's there for like petty theft, and he finds the widow. He's trying to interrogate the two kids to figure out where the money is. Ends up marrying the woman. He ends up killing her due to some things. Still trying to get his hands on, basically is terrorizing these kids. The kids end up running away, getting in a boat, drifting downriver, and this older woman ends up kind of taking them in. She's basically like these ragamuffin children. She's like, come on. She already has three girls. She takes these kids in. The preacher is still doggedly after the money. He's still trying to hunt them down. And there ends up being kind of this standoff between the old woman protecting these kids and him trying to get the money. He ends up, calling state troopers. They take him in. He is convicted, and things kind of end more happily with the children. It's Christmas Day. The old lady is giving them.
That's when I laughed when it ended on Christmas, and I was like, oh my gosh, just like Home Alone.
Yep.
And it ends happy because that was the law. You could not make a movie where a bad guy didn't get his comeuppance. I don't know when that changed, but in 1955, It was literally the law that you had to show that.
There was a little bit in the novel, I believe, that Robert Mitchum's character, Harry Powell, is actually a preacher. I believe in the movie, in order for it to get past, they're like, no, he's masquerading as a preacher.
Okay. The only other thing I'll add to your description is probably the most strikingly visual aspect of this movie that you would maybe recognize. If you know nothing about this movie, but you'd maybe recognize just from whatever, is that the preacher has tattooed on his
yes.
What is this part of your finger called? Wasn't your knuckle
just across
above
his knuckle?
That? Okay, so it's on his knuckles. Well, like the between your knuckle and there's a digit. What is this? Got to be named something. Maybe it is just your knuckles, but
anyway,
right
on his fingers.
So if you're making a fist, you would see that he has tattooed love and hate on his two fists. Knuckles.
Yes. And that shows up because you've seen Do the Right Thing, right?
No, but I've seen the visual thing. So again, I would have recognized that. But
yeah, I'll kind of let you talk about it first because I do have a bit of a history with this film. I love this film. But had you heard about this movie before?
Not since. Only from you, and it did come up when we were talking through highest to lowest, because I said I wanted to watch a few Spike Lee films that got to Do the Right Thing, that got to this. I added it to my watch list. That was my only experience. But it's a really good movie. A really good movie where I think anyone can watch it today. And I think it's because it is from 1955, like, if this movie were made today, it would be a lot darker and a lot harder to watch, I think, just because today's filmmakers would have taken a lot more, I think, pessimistic or nihilistic approach, I would guess. Whereas, obviously, you watch the end of this movie and it's a nice little happy ending. So I think it is a good movie for anyone that's like interested in that or like wants to kind of get into this genre of film, of taking some of these really like heinous things that go on. But yeah, the acting is phenomenal, obviously.
Oh, so good.
Robert Mitchum's voice just alone, like his control and just like his at different times conveying different like portrayal of what he's trying to do. The kids are fantastic. I was shocked to learn that neither one really did much after this is in the way of film. That boy, he looks so familiar, and he is
so good.
Phenomenal. He has at least one hijinks where he does like pull a shelf on top of Preacher Man, so pulling out his Kevin McAllister as best he can. The other thing that I did see when looking this up was that This was Charles Laughton's only movie?
Only. It did really poorly.
Okay.
People didn't like it. They couldn't. Part of the reason is they felt like it was too many genres. No one could quite pin down what this was.
Sure,
They were like, well,
sure.
it's a noir. Well, it's a thriller. Well, it's a fairy tale, because it is kind of a modern day fairy tale. And
Yeah.
so no one could really pin down what this movie was. So it wasn't well received, both critically and just box office. It did not do well, and so he preferred working on stage productions. He did not like working with kids. Robert Mitchum was drunk for most of production.
Sure.
So Charles Laughton just kind of threw up his hands and basically said, "Okay, fine, screw it." But then, yeah, some years later, I don't remember exactly how many, but some years later, it was like reevaluated, and people were like, "Oh, this is a masterpiece. Like this is on a lot of like Sight and Sounds. There was a French
Yeah.
list where it came in as the second best film after Citizen Kane. So this movie is kind of beloved,
Yeah,
but it wasn't in its time."
I think that makes a ton of sense. I kind of like the idea of him creating a masterpiece and then being like, yeah, I'm good. I'm gonna dip out. I'm gonna go do whatever else. So sounds like it's more
Yeah.
complex than that, but I like to think of that. No, I think from a visual perspective, there's one scene in the kid's room where it's like, I don't know, you can like see the set, but it's really silhouetted with what the preacher's doing, what the kids are doing, just visual. And there's
Yes.
the window scene where he's on the window because of the lamp. There's the underwater scene with their mom, and it's just phenomenal with how, as you mentioned, he kills the mom, and seeing her underwater visually was stunning. So
Yes.
overall, again, I think it's one of those movies you just watch and you're like, yeah, it's not boring, and it's like, this is really, really well put together. So tell me a little bit more about your experience.
Yeah, so I first watched this at BYU. I was taking an intro to film class. This was what they used for the acting week, as you can kind of see.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
Immediately kind of fell in love with it. Really, really loved it. Showed it to my brother a few years later. Again, was just like, wow, I love this film. Showed it to Sarah today, and I was just like, man, I love this movie. As far as kind of the technical stuff, like, totally agree on pretty much every count. Acting is just really great across the board. I think that Lillian Gish does a wonderful job of kind of portraying, this woman she's a little bit hardened. She's kind of strict, but so heartwarming.
Mm-hmm.
Like the scene where Robert Mitchum shows up and is like, "Oh yeah, I'm here for the kids." She immediately, you can tell she was like, a bullshit.
Yeah, no,
She's
exactly.
immediately like, yeah, okay. And I love when she walks into the house and walks back out just carrying a shotgun. But I just think she has some beautiful, beautiful scenes. One of the lines that I love is after when she's talking to Ruby and she goes, "You were looking for love in the only way that you know how." Or like the only foolish way you knew. And, she's kind of insulting her. She was just like, you foolish teenage child. But it is done in such a way where it's like, I can't be mad at you for this. Like, you're looking for love. Of course you are. But yeah, I mean, acting is really, really great. Robert Mitchum he does like the slimy, like, he's charming. He's charismatic.
Yeah.
And he's also a piece of garbage. Like, he is a
Yeah.
manipulative, evil character. It's actually a couple of things. It was actually Robert Mitchum's favorite movie that he was in.
Oh, no kidding.
Lillian Gish also spoke very highly of this film. The person who did the cinematography also worked with Orson Welles for The Magnificent Ambersons, I believe.
Okay.
And they said that there was only two directors who really understood light, and that was Orson Welles and Charles Laughton, which I think is really interesting because one of the things I love about this is black and white films are so interesting because I feel like some black and white films are really taking advantage of the fact that the film is in black and white.
Right.
And what I mean by that is sometimes you watch a movie and it's just a monochrome color film.
Yep.
It's just black and white because that's how it is.
Right.
This one, like, uses the black and white to its advantage.
Absolutely.
Like, it's got these, like, inky blacks in the night that create this kind of shadowy, almost otherworldly, like, yeah, fairy tale-esque environment. you've got these really cool things where ways are lit too, when the wife is laying down and she's got almost like a halo around her
Mm-hmm.
head. Just moments where the light kind of really stands out. But what I loved the most watching it this time was like the use of silhouettes
Mm.
with when they're it's when Pearl is playing with the doll and John is trying to, stuff the money back in the doll, and it pans out a little bit and you see the doorway of the house, and all of a sudden you just see this figure standing there.
Yeah.
And you don't even recognize, because he takes a few steps forward after a while, and then you can kind of see some of his face and his arm, but at first it's just this like black ominous figure that is so good. And then later on, when he's traveling on the horse and singing when Pearl and John are in the barn, same thing. Just this ominous figure just slowly making his way across the screen singing this song. It's really, really incredible the way that this movie just uses some of these black and whites, because there's scenes where you're just like, okay, this is monochrome. But there's just a lot of this movie that is like, we're gonna take these black images and we're gonna use the hell out of them. And I think it does a really spectacular job with that.
Yeah, I agree 100%, which is when you mentioned you watched this as like an acting portion of your intro to film class, I was a little surprised because I was like, oh, yes, the acting is phenomenal, but just the movie making deliberateness behind this is a masterclass that I was
Totally
extremely
agree.
impressed with. And I think you also brought up a really good point, and the ending caught me off guard a little bit. And
Oh,
I I did kind of sit with it and read a few people talk about it, and I think again same thing with Home Alone. Any time you're like watching something with a kid, there's a few things that happen. You can be like, "Oh, these kids are so stupid, like they don't understand how to do certain things or how to behave. Their decisions don't make sense." And it's because they're kids. It's because they have this innate sense of wanting, loving, and belonging. In Home Alone, he's mad at his parents, but ultimately he is, throughout the whole movie, just devastated that he's not with his family. And where this
right.
catches you off guard at the end is that when the police come to get the preacher, the boy runs over and
Yes.
is like, no, no, don't take him, because and someone points this out, I didn't catch it, but I read later on, though the scene between that and when they pick up his dad at the beginning is like
It's a
mirrored
trauma
almost
response.
exactly. And
Yep.
so it's this feeling again of belonging and love and like your father. And technically he was his father because his mom got remarried. And just again, like you mentioned, that the trauma response of like, no, I have these needs. And even though this man is trying to hurt me, I still need these needs met. And I think that is the only way I'm going to be able to do it. And so it is very interesting to watch and think of it from that perspective.
Yeah. I will talk about this, but I want to ask you I do have a favorite scene in this movie.
Okay.
There's a few scenes that I really love, but there's one scene in particularly that I just am like, that makes the movie for me. But I'm curious if you had one, just any moments or a scene that you really, really loved.
It was the one I mentioned earlier where they're in their bedroom and you can see like the
Mm,
triangle silhouette, and like the lighting there is just really, really phenomenal. I really like that. Plus when his shadow comes in through the window on the curtain, that was another
yes.
one that I really, really liked.
There's also a scene, this isn't my favorite scene, but it made me want to watch another film. When it's the wedding night between him and
Oh,
the
yeah.
mom, and you kind of have these angles of the walls and the lighting and stuff. There's a film called, older film called The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari,
Okay.
which is kind of this gothic German expressionist horror film. Haven't seen it, but have in all my studies and reading have heard a lot about it. I own it. I've been wanting to watch it. I would be curious to kind of watch those two back and back and see
Yeah.
how that scene seemed kind of inspired by that sort of
Awesome.
art style. But My favorite scene is actually the standoff when Harry Powell shows up, because I think what's interesting is this entire movie, he's been singing this song. He's been singing, leaning, leaning, leaning on the everlasting light, singing that the whole way. And so because he's been singing it throughout the entire film, every time you hear it, it's almost this cue of like, okay, he's here. It's like this harbinger of doom almost. It's
Yeah.
this, this, okay, something bad's gonna happen. It kind of triggers this like stress response. And he starts singing it when he's outside, because he's like, I'm gonna come back tonight. He comes back the night. And the widow, Mrs. Cooper, starts singing with him.
Mm-hmm.
But the difference is she's singing, leaning on Jesus, leaning on Jesus. And I, as someone who is religious, and we've talked a little bit about this, I love that concept of like, when you take Jesus out of the equation, what do you have? Because the preacher is so, Harry Powell is so obsessed with following rules. He's so concerned with, women showing off. He's so concerned with temptation. He's so concerned with, he talks about cities and he calls them Sodom, and he's so concerned with like how worldly the world is. But you look at him, he's the villain.
Right.
He's a murderer, he's a thief, he's manipulative, he terrorizes and abuses these children for money, he's greedy. Like, he's not a good guy, but he's still so concerned with all these rules. And I think that that's really reflective of religion in general. I think when and this is not a religious podcast, this is a movie podcast, but religion is something that's very important to me. And I feel a lot of spiritual connections in movies. And this is one of those that I just think really resonates. It's so subtle. It's a very, very subtle, very, really small way of changing it, but it paints a really vivid message, and I think it portrays it brilliantly, because that's the difference between Harry Powell and Mrs. Cooper is, and there's more to it, but at the end of it, I think that's the difference is Harry Powell has taken Jesus out of the equation entirely, and Mrs. Cooper, that is the central figure. I mean, you see it when she's reading too, when she pulls out the Bible and John leaves the room. Like, John's like, screw that. But then the way she kind of starts talking about it, he's like, oh, maybe this is kind of interesting. And I think the connection between Mrs. Cooper and John is also beautiful. I love when he's laying against her leg. I love when he gives her the apple for Christmas. I think it's a beautiful just connection that they start to develop. But yeah, I just think that is really, really interesting, that it takes this song that has kind of been tainted throughout the film as this, this signal that, oh, the villain is coming, the evil is coming, and it changes into, oh, when you put Jesus back in, it's actually something really beautiful. It's actually something really powerful. It's something that gives hope and light. And yeah, like I said, I think it's subtle. But I think it's done in a really beautiful and brilliant way, and that is my favorite scene for that
Awesome.
reason.
I'm so glad you shared all that. That's really good. And again, yeah, it's as you mentioned, subtle but very, I think, deliberate in its delivery of sort of that, beware of the people that appear a certain way, but their actions tell very differently. So really, really great watch. I'm really glad that we got to work through this one. And again, there's the scene in the cellar where he does pull some Kevin McAllister hijinks with the preacher,
right?
And it ending on Christmas is just the perfect tie into Home Alone. So I really, and again, you do have the kids alone for a portion of the movie, again, similar to how Home Alone is all Home Alone. So great comparison.
It's not necessarily one that I would be like, yeah, if you loved Home Alone, you'll probably like Night of the Hunter. Like,
not at all.
It's not quite that. That being said, I feel I would be hard pressed to find someone who didn't at least like Night of the Hunter.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Yeah.
Did you have a star rating for this one? Or?
I did actually. I gave it a 4.5. I thought, again, really, and again, one of those, a movie that if someone said this is like on a list of most influential or greatest movies of in history, I wouldn't bat my eye. I'd be like, oh yeah, absolutely, this is phenomenal.
Yeah, this one is, I think quality is 5-star and enjoyability is 5-star. Like, this is a 5-star movie for me. I absolutely love it. And there are some movies that are 5-star movies that, I don't know, I almost feel like I have to say because I'm a pretentious film person where I'm like, oh yeah, Citizen Kane, that's a 5-star movie. Which again, it's a brilliant film, but this is one that I genuinely, this is kind of almost like a Wizard of Oz for me, where I'm like, yeah, it's brilliant, it changed cinema forever. I also love it.
Sure.
Like, I also just have a wonderful time watching it. It makes me happy. I think it's a delightful film. It's one of the first Criterion films I ever own. Again, I've showed it to a couple people. Haven't found someone yet who didn't like it. There's a couple moments that are a little dated, couple times that it's a little cheesy, but overall, I think it's a lovely film.
Great.
But Adam, what are we watching?
Great question as always. I have no idea. Just kidding.
Okay.
We do have a little. We haven't, before recording this, we haven't planned a few out of December. So obviously we'll be watching some Christmas stuff. So I think what we are watching again is there's so many movies coming out. Thanksgiving week, we're getting Hamnet, we're getting Sentimental Value, we're getting the ones we've already talked about. We're getting Knives Out at the beginning of December. We're getting Avatar 3 at the end. We're getting The Testament of Anne Lee at the end. We're getting Marty Supreme at the end. So we're tons and tons of award contenders coming out. Again, I'm going to milk out as many Oscar episodes as possible. So that'll probably be, end of February, beginning of March. We'll do all those. Still working through Studio Ghibli. I think I'm at 10. Mm-hmm. So I'm almost halfway through. So I kind of need to crank that this month as well. Make sure that we're there in time for January episodes. But yeah, we're loving the movie watching. That's a big part of the podcast, is knocking off and making sure that we're, consistently doing that and talking about it, because it is something we both love to do. And it's helpful to have this to do that. And we appreciate everyone that listens, subscribes, comments, 5-star review, all that jazz. Keep doing it. We really appreciate all the support.
And again, we will not have an episode next week on Thanksgiving, simply because, again, it is Thanksgiving. We don't anticipate many people are going to be eagerly awaiting for our episode Thursday morning. It's a wonderful time to spend family and friends, good food. So we won't be here next week, but we will be here the week after. And like I said, more, or like Adam said, I guess, more award stuff, Christmas movies, and Studio Ghibli are kind of on the horizon.
Yep. But this does actually release after Thanksgiving, doesn't it?
No. Oh, yeah, because Thanksgiving's this Thursday. Damn.
When do you guys head to Utah?
In 2 days. 3 days.
Oh. Yeah, well, don't forget.
Okay, so Adam is right. This will be airing the week after Thanksgiving. My mistake.
It's okay. You're on the edit, so you can take all that out or leave it in, because it's funny.
Yeah, it is funny. All right, well, we will catch you guys next week.
See you later.